too.
I hit record because we're gonna jump right in here. This is the exact feel that I want for today. Is you're gonna get to hang out. It's like if Drew and Trent were hanging out at P Banquet. You get to kind of come alongside and just we're gonna talk some shop. Um, we've intentionally decided to go a third masterclass in a row without like prepared slides or and Drew has a ton of content he could pull up at a moment's notice here, but I think that the best way to do this is going to be for us to just talk informally and for us to do a bit of a deep dive. Um, Drew Frank, ladies and gentlemen, Masterclass Season 2.
Thanks, Trent. Thanks for having me. I like that form and just going back and forth and bringing up topics, and would like it to be as interactive as you're comfortable having it. I know, Trent, you're good at teeing me up for questions and bringing up some of the old school stories and history. But certainly would like to be as present and as current as possible. I know it's fun to talk about how things were 5 and 10 and 15 years ago, but
Right.
the things that I want to talk about are more related to the basic principles that have been tried and true for
Hmm.
decades in Vector, and what that means today, and how that helps our current state of the business. And there are a lot of things that have changed, but a lot of things that have remained the same, and that's why I love Vector, and that's why I stay here and plan to stay here, because I still get so much value and so much out of my daily routine and activity, the people that I work with, the growth that I experience. So anyway, I'm looking forward to this conversation. I have a handful of bullets and things that I think could be valuable, but we'll table them and just see how it evolves. And it was interesting. Gina Nappi, who lives in Denver now, she's a former Silver Cup winner, Silver Cup champion out in Northeast. She is dating one of my assistant division manager. Moved to Colorado this past year, and we were at a concert the other night, and we were waiting for the band. We were at String Cheese Incident, and we were waiting for the band to come on, and and we were just sitting there, and Gina leans over, and she's her business, she's doing really well. Obviously she was Vector trained, and she's doing incredibly well with her current sales position, but she was just asking for some advice and just asking for some perspective. And we were like right in between the concert, everyone's getting riled up for the show, and we're just leaning in like face to face, eye to eye, having this intense conversation. I'm talking about the pillars of being a business person and growing an organization, and we're having this like 20-minute intense conversation, and then like the lights turn down, the show comes on, and I just snap back into reality. But I love talking philosophy. I love digging deep. So this isn't going to be like a however much time we have. I hope it's not just like PDI and PCs and how to get pop. I'd like to
I want to get into some of your bullets, and I've posted in the chat here questions for Drew here. And
mm,
today, I'm inspired by what Jordan Farber did last week when we asked her to actually read her question out, or she even did a better job of iterating her own question when she brought it. So if you post a question in the chat, I'm going to invite you to actually ask Drew yourself. I think it'd be great for him to hear your voice. And last week's masterclass was infinitely better because Jordan came into the chat. Jordan has entered the chat. So if you have questions for Drew, go ahead and throw them up there. I have a couple questions for Drew, and especially I love the community that we've built here around Masterclass. It is, I would say, Drew, primarily uh, newer district managers. I think a lot of them are utilizing this as like a main place to get their vector content. They've been faithful to watch videos in between, and even some of them have watched some of your videos coming into today. If we go back to early Drew, and the reality is, everybody needs to know two things about Drew. He would probably say that he wasn't as good as everybody thought he was, but also he knew he was every bit as good as he was. I don't know if that makes any sense here. Like, it's not like Drew didn't come from great stock. He came from like Earl's division. He came from Micah Bucky's, one of the greatest recruiters of all time in our company. He was seasoned as a pilot manager before going out, so he had the pedigree. This guy was the MIT grad that you're going to recruit, Penn State grad, I should say, in this case. But like, he's the guy that you're like, oh, this guy should do great, and was doing pretty good, but it didn't always feel good. And so, if we could talk a little bit about Drew, a couple thoughts there. One is, what was it that was leading to that early success? And even if others might have called it success, I don't know that you necessarily were early there, and we had to get that ship kind of righted there. So why don't we talk a little bit about just early moving out to Denver, don't know anybody, right? You had a roommate. but it wasn't like it wasn't going awesome like it probably could have, should have.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the numbers don't always reflect the story, and I was putting up big numbers, and we had a lot of success with recruiting, but I wasn't doing it in the right way in a lot of areas. I was working really hard, had a pretty positive attitude, but it was my version of positivity on the surface, but not really deep down authentic positive leadership. And so for the first year or two, I think we all get in that habit of we just work as hard as possible and we try to make as much happen, but the little things that make the what's up, Hans? Little things that make the big difference with relationships, connections, spending time, and really understanding what why I'm here for the business. It's easy to get caught up and excited about the small things, whether it's competition or the standings or the trips and achievement, but really finding purpose and finding what I enjoyed and what I loved about the business. And after a year, 2 years, really clicking that I just loved helping people grow. I loved helping people succeed, myself included. That wasn't just just totally servant leadership. I think I've evolved more towards that as the years went on, but including myself, I wanted to give everybody in my organization the best opportunity. So, to me, that was just leading by example. Nothing was too good for me. Nothing was too big for me. I wanted to make sure that I showed that I could outwork and outlast anybody in the business on any level. And it may have been a little bit of ego talking, but I also had Carl Gedris and Kathy Christian, who was Vasquez at the time. And, I had some of these big pillar, Aneth down in Eastern region. I had so many, big time, Angie putting up $1 million a year, Dan Cassetta, these managers that were just killing it. Trent was only a few years away, out of, being a DVM. And so, it was, what I focused on was just work ethic and energy. And, as prepared as I was, as skilled as I was, I knew that if I put in more time, more effort, more energy into my business, then I was going to get more in return. But I think that the shift, Trent, was more of, it was all just, intense pounding, whether it was recruiting or training or, working with reps or getting the most out of myself or creating programs. It went from that, sense of I have to do this. And then what triggered is the real purpose of why I'm doing it. And I think on the greater scale, I think there are a couple of things that really stand out to me. One was that, as fun as Vector is, as much as this is a family and a community, it's still a job. And this is a livelihood. And, for those, whether you're building a future family or building your savings or for retirement or comfort or just a lifestyle that you want. For me, I knew that this was going to be the best vehicle towards what I wanted in my life. And deep down outside of Vector, what I really wanted was to become a millionaire by 30 and retired by 40. And I told myself that when I was 18 years old, when I was, sitting in my first SC1s and SC2s and listening to, messages at conferences. And I would write in my, MB30, RB40. And I've been writing that little, note to myself since I was, right out of high school. And I knew that Vector was either the place that I could make that money or learn to make that money. And that was very apparent because the skills that I learned was whether it was recruiting, building a team, a lateral move towards another company. Obviously, the Vector has found a way to keep me here, but that was really the click was that I know that this company gives me the opportunity to either make that money and make this be my main vehicle, or it'll give me the skills and the tools to learn what I need to be able to do that somewhere else. And, it was also that combined with this really, intense sense of wanting to get the most out of everything that I'm doing. I have a very close relationship with time. And I think we all do, whether that's experiencing death or loss or just, passing of time. I became very aware that really early on that I didn't want any time to go by without doing something great, right? So every year had to be a needle mover. Every day had to be moving forward. And my college roommate told me, when I was eating a bag of chips one day and he was on his way to the gym, he said, "Hey, everything you do in life gets you closer or further away to your goals." And I just realized I don't want to be mediocre at anything. If I'm going to do something, I want to be great at it. And my intention wasn't to win a bunch of silver cups. My intention wasn't to be, on any, in anybody else's terms of what greatness is in Vector. For me, it was, I just want to do the best that I can. And I want to give it 100% of what I can, because you only live once and you only have one opportunity, and no matter what you're doing. And when I was, training for, triathlons, I wanted to be the best of that. And I put everything I had into that because that's what I was doing. Right. And when I was, writing programs and building things for Cutco, I put every bit of energy, every bit of passion into it, because that was the most important thing. So I used to joke around with my DMs and my CSPs, like, be great at everything you do, right? If you're in a relationship, be the best boyfriend, the best girlfriend, on the planet. If you are a teacher, be the best teacher. If you're a vector manager, be the best vector manager. If you're going to go for a run, be the best runner. If you're going to take a dump, take the best dump on the planet. Like, it was things like that. It was just that no mediocrity in anything we do. And Vector gave me the ability to always be able to grow, always be able to get better. And so that's what I leaned into. I just looked for areas to grow, looked for areas to improve, whether it's improving myself, improving others, or improving systems. And by the way, that was the conversation I had with Gene, and I'll get back to that. But Gina's like, how do you do it? How do you put it all together? And I said, there's 3 legs, right? It's 3 legs that you stand on. You've got to be able to develop yourself and be good to yourself. You've got to be able to develop others and be good to others. You've got to be able to develop system and be good to your systems. And so we can get into that in a bit, but I just love that Vector always gave me the opportunity to keep on growing myself and keep on stimulating my brain and keep on diving into new programs and keep on reinventing. I was lucky enough, unfortunately and fortunately, my division manager left when I was right after my first year as a DM. So I was kind of a new DM, adolescent in the business, trying to figure it out. And I kind of was, along with Patty Breton at the time, and Nick Matlack, the 3 of us kind of, put our arms together and figured out, what do we need to do to create a big business? And we're kind of forced into that action. So I love that Vector gives me the opportunity to grow. I love that it gave me the opportunity to lean into what I wanted to create out of my life, which was the foundation, the income opportunity, the growth, the development. When I say retired by 40, it was that I want to take all the principles that Cutco has given me and everything that I've been able to create for my life inside the business and also outside, and be able to use that to coach and teach and pay that forward. So I'm inspired by this business just as much today as I was when I first started, because it's not about knives and standings and quantum reports and every interview. And it's not about those things. There's so much of a bigger picture. And I have so much of an appreciation for that.
Hey, welcome. If you're just joining us, we've got Drew Frank today. We've decided to dive right in. Sometimes we won't start hitting record until 13 past, but we don't want to miss a minute here. If you're just joining us, we've decided to keep things super chill today and relax in terms of program. Your questions are going to be where we're going to go. And we started the first question with, hey, Drew, how'd you get started kind of early on here? Drew, I want to come back to a conversation we had early in our coaching relationship. And I remember you were frustrated. You were just at the point where you're like, we used to run day 2 PDI. So we'd run day 2 training, which is already the heaviest day of the week. It's already usually a 12-hour day if you do pump in as well already. And usually you've eaten no food, and then you run an interview after that training, and then you're doing PDI till like 9, 10 at night. And Drew was like, dude, I hate this. I mean, I hate this. Do you remember this conversation, Drew?
Yeah.
So where'd that conversation go from there? The hint is change it. Now, the key was here, folks, Drew didn't have a division manager, so I was kind of a surrogate division manager. I was able to help him make changes to the business with guardrails, right? To make sure he didn't go off the cliff. He had somebody that he was running the ideas by. The caveat again, no changes to your program without running it by your DVM, which Drew was doing with me. But we gave him permission to think. Drew, let's talk a little bit about permission to think about the business. You call these the programs now and systems, permission to think. You remember this conversation?
Absolutely. This stimulated so many powerful program changes. One of the things that you coached me to do early on was question things in a positive way. And there were so many things about the business that I love, but then I started realizing, like, why do people leave Cutco? Why do people leave the business? Why do reps leave? Why do managers leave? Why is there turnover, whether it's healthy turnover or not? Why do people leave? And I started questioning that and realized, through coaching with Trent, that all the problems that I wanted to, I could get better at the things that I was good at, but also if I could just focus on one problem at a time, one thing that was either a sticking point, a pain point, annoying, frustrating, or something that didn't serve my business, if I could fix that one thing, just eliminate the frustrations. Because ultimately life is about emotions, right? Whether it's work or relationships or whatever you're doing, we're all just a puddle of mush and bones. And just like we're literally just electric synapses in our brain and we're just emotions, right? So that's whatever we're doing, whatever job you have, it's the return you get from that. And it's the value that you get from that. So for me, it was the only reason why I wouldn't want to do this job is if there were too many frustrations. Right. The only reason why I wouldn't want to be here is if I just don't enjoy my time. If I love it, I'm going to stay. That's what I told myself from day one. If I love this job, I'm going to keep on doing. That's what I promised to reps in training. If you love it, keep on doing it. If you don't love it, no big deal. Return your kit. They don't have to return their. Well, I guess I don't know if that's a thing anymore. But that was the promote. And for me, it's the same thing. So I wanted to eliminate the things that were frustrating my business. And I remember 4 years in college, I was, summer break and I'm, a sales manager. So it's Friday night and every Friday night I'm at my office. And back then you're not on a cell phone. So you're not like a restaurant taking, text messages and things like that. Back in the day, like day 2 PDI and, Jay Brad is like invented this program. But day 2 PDI was, at the end of day 2, you would sit there at the office on a landline for 4 or 5 hours and reps, the training class would be checking in and, it'd be a 5-10 minute conversation, getting them excited about fast start contests, talking about their schedule, really intense conversations. This was vector training that worked and it made a big difference in pop and launch percentage. That was back when we were selling a sample kit. But and that was the main point of it. It was like, hey, you got your 159, you got $150. So, and then you would have to have a conversation. It's like, I was telling somebody this the other day. It was crazy, the amount of salesmanship. And now I love the authentic leadership. And Jay Brad is such a great example of that. Is just speak from the heart, treat people, like humans and always be 100%, upfront and honest. Don't need to be salesy in any way. And again, Jay Brad's a great example of that. But back in the day, we used to be like, hey, if you didn't know about the 159, really? Well, listen, if you couldn't pay attention in an hour-long interview, well, how could I expect you to pay attention in 3 days of training? So if you can't come up with the 150, I don't know if this is the right job for you anyway. Like it was horrible. It was horrible. Like you don't do that. You don't do that. But it was like, that was day 2 PDI. Also, like that was back when we were launching like 40, 50, 60 at a time. And so what the stimulus to the day 2 PDI, I was telling Trent all the time how frustrated I was. And he said, fix it. He said, get rid of your frustration, figure out a way. And he said, is it, and we talked about permissible versus beneficial. Is it permissible to create a program that you don't do day 2 PDI or you change it to make it serve you? And is it beneficial? And we would just weigh those. And in so many situations, that conversation is really valuable. We also, so the way that happened was I lost my voice on day 1. We had it was 212 set for training. We had 116 show. I rented a hotel. It was just, just rows and rows of seats in a conference room, 116 in, like the back row, there were people with headphones. There was somebody with a baby in the back. Like it was crazy. It was these big trainings. And I was like shouting because the microphone didn't work. So I was like shouting all day 7-8 hours of training. And at the end, I get to the end and I start, I start thinking about day 2 PDI and I had no voice left, completely shot. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do PDI for 60 reps tonight. So I text Trent and I was like, I can't do it. And then we had talked about it, and he said, find a way. So I just sat there and I just thought of a conversation. And this is kind of where the what's in it for them. That's always been a standard conversation in Vector, but this is where it developed for me. And I stood in front of the group and I said, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. And let me tell you how we normally do things. And I explained what day 2 PDI was. I explained why we did it. I explained the reason why it was so important for me to talk to everybody for at least 5 or 10 minutes, the types of conversations we would normally have and what I expect from them. I also talked about leadership. I talked about people stepping up. I started using the Michael Phelps quotes of it's not what you do in the dark. It's not what you do in the light. It's what you do in the dark, right? Or what's what you do in the dark that puts you in the light. And I just talked about, being an entrepreneur and work ethic. And I it's where the 10-80-10 conversation came from. Hey, there's 100 of you in this room. So 10 of you are going to go home and you're not going to do anything tonight. There's going to be 10 of you that don't do anything. And that's okay. This job isn't for 10% of people. Right. But for the 90%, and then I would talk about 80%, you're going to go in and put in a really incredible effort. and you are going to, so 10%, I wish you luck. And I hope you got a lot out of training. If you get started, this will be great. But you know what? Is really about who I'm talking to is those of you who go ahead and put in the effort and you do what you're supposed to do, because you know that what you put in is what you get out. And I talk about, the investment of your energy paying back tenfold, and being uncommon, and value in is value out, and talk about what their life can be by learning lessons of work ethic, and staying ahead of the curve. And they're competing against not just the people in this room or people in their class at the university, but the entire world of hundreds of millions or billions of people that they have to compete against in the professional environment. This is where it's at, and this is where you can take your, make your statement. This is also an opportunity that what if the energy you put in, this is where I started those what if conversations. What if the energy you put in to your phone calls tonight could set you on a path towards financial success and security for the rest of your life? Now, I can't guarantee, David, I can't guarantee this is going to happen. But if you go home tonight and you spend 3 hours making phone calls, and you make phone calls until your phone dies, you charge it back in, and your phone shorts out because you're using too much electricity, your lips fall off because they're turning purple because you're making too many phone calls. But if you do that tonight, you invest that time tonight, think about what it's going to do. Imagine, hitting your first or second promotion this weekend. Imagine what it's going to feel like getting that big first paycheck. Imagine what it's going to feel like a couple months from now, working at 30%, being able to have a flexible part-time opportunity where you're making full-time income, having the resume, of a seasoned CEO by the time you graduate from college gives you the ability to do whatever the hell you want in your life. I don't care how long you sell Cutco, but this is so valuable to you. And tonight is the most important activity you will ever do in the job. How you start something is how you finish. And this is like the starting line of a race. So all those conversations came from the fact that I lost my voice. I didn't have the energy to spend 3 or 4 hours on PDI. So I just had those as group conversations. And from that came 10-80-10. Some of you are in this position, some of you are in this position. And 10% of you, you're as soon as you leave this door, you're going to be calling when you're walking out to your car. You're not even going to wait until you get home to start setting your appointments. Some of you are going to be you're going to sit in the parking lot. I'm going to see you 2 hours from now, still on your phones getting appointments, because these are the overachievers. And you know what happens to overachievers? And I just talk about, like, these conversations, this is what this story is about. But the idea is from a situation of frustration where I said, how do I take this frustrating point of my business to make it better for me and everybody else, create a system around it. And as I said before, this is, serving myself, serving others, and serving the systems of my business at the same time. And from there, we had the best, we had the most demos. We had the best show to the next day that I ever had. We had a really incredible launch. I think from that group, I think we did 40K first weekend, 50K first weekend, something like that. It was one of our first, 100K new business weeks that we had in the pilot or in South Denver. So that was stimulated by trying to figure out, how to avoid a problem, a frustration. And as you said, Trent, it's questioning. Sorry, as you say, questioning everything in a positive way. And it came from questioning, but you also taught me how to make sure that I mitigated risks. And whenever I looked for an opportunity to change a program, whenever I, thought about, okay, what about a schedule change, an interview change? You would always say, okay, well, what are the positives and what could go wrong? What are all the things that could go wrong? And most of those decisions, when I would create a new program or change an interview script or change something in training or flip-flop a schedule, going from 3-day training to 2-day training was a major one. So a couple of years later, that came from, as a seasoned DVM, it was more that I needed to find more time for my DMs to manage reps, because they were spending so much time training and they felt like they didn't have the ability to develop and manage reps. So that was a frustration for them. And I figured, how do I create a program that helps me as a DVM, helps my district managers, serving my people, and also creating a system. And so we spent months and months and months creating this program. And it wasn't just an overnight, just, see what works. It was, everything detailed to, every I dotted and T crossed on the training programs, the scripts. So, again, it's that frustration, mitigating risk, but also creating a program behind it is important.
Hopefully everybody here is seeing that there's some method to the madness. It's not just throw everything out, right? A lot of times when we were tearing this down, there was a good foundation there somewhere. So for example, PDI on day 2, Drew referred to, there was a purpose for that. We needed to see who's going to finish training. We're trying to retain people for the launch tomorrow, but we're also trying to not just launch dead zombies. We're trying to launch reps into activity that first weekend. So if we started with what were we trying to do when we came up with this, and what could the better result be, and the sausage, how that gets made, there's a lot of different things that go into that. But we kicked around a ton of different things that we could do before we finally came down on, hey, let's try this. And it could sound, by the way, haphazard. There was weeks of conversations into that one day, and then necessity made today the day to jump into that. I'm not sure if any of us would encourage, hey, 116 people, change your program today. See how that works out for you. But it was a considered move that we made long haul there. So, Drew, let's talk a little bit more about what's in it for them, because this is one of the foundational principles that we got into early there as well. And anything that I passed to you, somebody gave to me at some point or another. What's in it for them is the WIIFT concept there. And is really designed to almost be the old vector adage, which used to say if we help enough people get what they want, then we will get what we want, which I think goes all the way back to Zig Ziglar. But Drew, let's do a little bit of a deep dive there on what's in it for them.
Sure. And I'm sure it was Jay, Brad, and Dan, and all the legends that we all learn from. Jay, I'm just gonna throw everything at you today. But that's really the beauty of vector, right? It's learning in quick time. That's why I love reading. That's why I love listening to podcasts, because you can learn somebody's entire lifetime of somebody's achievements and what they've learned in such a short period of time. So for me to be able to gobble up from all the vector greats before me, be able to take that and run with it. So a lot of times I heard a concept, Dirty 30 was from Matt King down in Eastern region, and I heard the concept and I was like, he's doing an okay job of that. Let me make it better. And then I created an entire program around it. I stole it and I took all the credit for the last 10 years. So I'll do that with what's in it for them as well. The idea came from, really, it was Dave Madrid back in the old school days at a day of decadence. One time he taught me about want to versus need to conversations. And we were trying on suits at a day of decadence, and we were in the waiting room watching Wes Goddard try on pants. It took way too long, but Dave was talking about want to versus need to conversations, and he said, a lot of times managers, they tell people what they need to do, and it's not overtly, and most people don't even recognize it in themselves, but it's a lot of telling people what they need to do, what they should do, and giving them direction versus putting everything in terms of what they want to do. And if we put a value, if we create the value for them, we want, and for me too, if somebody gives me a decision, I want it to be my decision. If Trent, like for example, for this masterclass, Trent asked me 3 times, and the first 2 times I was like, no, I'm busy. No, it doesn't work in my calendar. I don't know what I'm doing in December yet. And then I was like, and I texted him, I was like, hey Trent, I want to do another masterclass. And then it ended up being the same date that he presented to me a couple months ago. But because it was my idea, I feel so much better about it because I have the ownership, right?
It's a better idea.
Yeah, it's way better. So, so the same thing for whether it's reps or managers or anybody. And the beauty of this conversation is it's very open. It's not like you're doing anything to somebody. It's not a mind trick. It's not salesy. It's just authentic and open. And what's in it for them is just putting things in terms of what the value will be for their life and for their future. And oftentimes we don't give ourselves enough credit for being able to paint that vision for people. And because of our life experience, because of our vector experience, because of our experience doing that thing, we are in a position to be able to paint the picture and build value and get people excited about what's ahead and create that vision. Because otherwise, without you, it's just whatever thought they have that they conceive. And to me, everybody's a blank slate, and I want to everybody's opportunity is a blank slate too. So for example, if Lexi is talking to me about if we're talking about a conference or let's even more simple, a team meeting. A lot of times managers will say, hey, team meeting is on Wednesday night. It's from 6 until 8. It's going to be incredible. You're going to love it. Here's what it's going to be. Make sure you're there. We're going to have everybody there, right? And that seems like a good promotion. It seems like a good reminder. But every conversation I have, I want to be building more and more value. Because in the time that I talk to somebody, in that gap from that time until the next time I talk to them, there's a lot of devalue that's happening, right? Because I'm like a walking, talking testimonial. And that for me, like power promotion, I'll lead what's in it for them into power promotion because they go hand in hand. But to me, I'm a walking, talking testimonial, not just for Vector, but for them. and I am their biggest advocate. I'm their biggest coach, and I am always gassing them up. So my job as a leader is to gas people up and to get them excited about things that they already want to do. So, or things that I know would be of value for them, but they don't know that they want to do that yet, right? Talking to somebody going to their first conference. I remember going to my first RDC, and somebody, just for 10, 15 minutes talking about, Margot Myers and all of these CSPs that were going to be running this conference. And from there, I said, this is going to be really important to me. This is going to help my Cutco career. This is going to double my average order. This is going to give me the stimulation to be able to go on my track towards, MB30, RB40, right? So because I was able to internalize it, it was my decision. So if Lexi, I'm talking about the team meeting, it's, hey, Lexi, the team meeting is going to be great. Of course, I want everyone to be there, but here's why I think that you are going to get the most out of this team meeting more than any other. We're going to be having a talk on recommendations. Celeste is actually going to be giving a talk on recos. She averages 10 recommendations per customer. About a month ago, she was averaging like 2 or 3, and she came down, she sat down with me, and she said that she was, didn't know she could be in the business. She was thinking about quitting. We had a quick conversation. We learned a couple things. She picked up a couple keys that she's going to be teaching at the team meeting this week. And now she's averaging 10 plus. She just hit the newsletter 3 times in a row. She just made her biggest paycheck ever. She's really excited about being able to take a week off, during finals, blah, blah, blah. And so the reason why that I want you to be at this team meeting is because I think that you can have the same type of value. I think you can get the same result that Celeste has gotten. And I think if you listen to those keys, this is going to change your Cutco career. And to be honest, I know that if I were in your position, I would probably be questioning myself right now, and I'd be a little bit frustrated because I haven't been getting the results I wanted. So I would be doing you a disservice if I told you that this wasn't like the most important team meeting, and it would mean a lot to me if you were there. Right. So just framing something in a way that is completely 100% about that person, because ultimately my goals, my results, my success is going to come from the aggregate cumulative success of all the people in my organization. Right. So that's math wise, and also just, that's just how it works. Right. We are judged based on the cumulative success of our people. So I want what's best for them. And if we're always talking in terms of what's best for them, it ends up being what's best for you too. And sometimes not immediately, sometimes later, right? And sometimes it comes back, and it's those short-term, gains. It's important to understand that sometimes it's more for the long-term, relationship versus the short-term, quick CPO or quick result. So that's the what's in it for them. Trent, I think it's the power. Another powerful lead-in would be the power of promotion, because that what's in it for them conversation about the value of why it's beneficial for them, what it could do for their future. And again, it's the building value, but I think it's painting the picture too is such an important part, because we don't know what we don't know. And Hans has been in this company for so long. Hans has experienced the highest heights of the company, silver cups and championships, and being the best of the best, and being a DM and CSP. So to give yourself permission to say, hey, can I tell you what this could be for you, and to use your experience, to your advantage, and really tell that story. So the power of promotion is what, why, how. What, why, how is the power of promotion. So what is it? Why is it important to them? Which is the what's in it for them conversation, and how is it going to happen? So if I want to have a promotional conversation with Maddie, I'll say, let's say it's signing up for a conference that might cost, a couple $100 to go. They got to buy a flight. It's a process, right? So Maddie, let me tell you about the conference. Let me tell you about year-end banquet. And I talk about it until I'm tired of talking about it. Like I'm the walking, talking testimonial where I'm just lighting this up like it's the greatest thing that's ever hit the planet, right? So the more enthusiastic I am about building that value, right? Same thing as Cutco, right? So we're building value in the product, which is the what. The why is the what's in it for them. So Maddie, here's why year-end banquet I think is going to be really important for you. Even if you're not in Cutco by this time next year, or this time 6 months from now, this event is like going to a Tony Robbins event. It's like going to something you would pay thousands and thousands of dollars for, to get this personal, professional, financial growth. You're with entrepreneurs. You're with people that are. I can go for 15 minutes about what they're going to learn, the guest speakers, increasing average order, even just the free Cutco, right? So so really promotion of the event. Second thing, what's in it for them, Maddie? This is why I think it's going to be so important to you, for you. I think that you are the type of person that you're going to be successful in anything you do. I think you're going to have a long, successful career. I would like that to be here as long as possible. But I know you're going to be incredible at what you do. This event, this conference will get you there 10 years sooner, whether that's a Cutco, career, or whether that's, whatever you want to do in any other industry. You're going to hit the success that you want 10 years sooner just by being part of this organization, by going to events like this, because you're putting yourself in position to network. You're putting yourself in position to learn. You are growing faster than anybody else in your age. You're doing things that are uncommon. And more importantly, the excitement, enthusiasm that you're going to gain from this, it's going to pay back right away. You're going to make more money, bigger paychecks than you ever have. You're going to build bigger, better relationships. You're going to think bigger about the company. You're going to meet this guy, Hans, that just, he literally poops CPO. I thought there was 2 poop jokes in one, 2. We'll get to 3, I promise. But you're going to meet, Hans Hilton, and he's going to teach you, how to, X, Y, Z, right? So the what's in it for them, what they're going to gain, and then the how is, call to action. So the call to action is put it in your schedule, sign up, event register on Vector Connect, all the whole deal. So power of promotion, it includes that what's in it for them conversation. It's what, why, how. What is it? What's in it for them, which is the why. Why is it important to them, and how, which is the call to action. And the call to action is usually just the first step. So many times we have a great idea and we don't take the first step. And for me, the first step is just putting it in my planner. 100% of the time I have my planner within arm's reach. I'm never, never away from this. I have one of these for every year of my life. It's the same calendar, the same schedule. They all look the same. And my weeks kind of all look the same. And I am very, very detailed in my planning, very detailed in my schedule. And it's, it's just that action, it's what is it, what's in it for them, call to action, and make a plan for it.
So Drew, we're noticing there a very analog approach to planning. I mean, pen and paper or pencil and paper look like pen to me. And you're in a physical planner. How much time are you investing into planning on a weekly basis, let's say?
The amount of time is hard to tell because it's consistent. I'm always in planning mode. I plan dedicated time, at least 15, 20 minutes a day, just, detailing the minutia in my day and the little ins and outs and planning for the next day. Every week, at least an hour, typically on the weekend, fleshing out the daily stuff. But really, it's about the big planning and planning further ahead. I felt like a lot of my I was able to do a lot more as a DM, and I'm able to do a lot more now in my day and in my week because there's time for it, and I don't get overwhelmed. I don't get too frustrated because there's always a time for it. And as long as there's a place in the calendar, it's out of my head, then I feel comfortable. So I could have 1,000 things to do for the week, and as long as it's on paper and there's a time slot, I don't really have to think about it until that comes. So I don't get overwhelmed by what's ahead as long as there's good planning. But it really starts with mind mapping what's important for the year. One of the things that I do each year is I will take my personal life, and I'll turn it into sections. I'll take my Cutco life, and then just different areas, and I'll just do a mind map. And for example, this is, last year, I put down my intentions. So one of the categories is intention. So who do I want to be? How do I want to be? How do I want to interact with people? One of my boxes is experiences. These are the things that I wanted to do. And I put this together last Thanksgiving time, and I usually create it for the next year, kind of like a dreams list. But all the things on my experience list, I knocked those out. So to me, it was even despite it being another challenging COVID year, another really hard year for the world, I felt really like I got a lot of value out of last year, and I felt like I did a lot of things that were important to me, and I had those intentions. I've got my personal care section, how I'm going to take care of myself, because I'm my number one asset, emotionally, physically, mentally. I've got to take care of myself and invest in myself. People, so a list of people that are important to me that I wanted to make really strong connections with and invest my time with, my ideal schedule, and then financial goals. And I do that for Cutco. So I've got, my section for, ideas and thoughts for my CSP organization, for my DMs, for my pilot, programs that I want to create, documents that I want to create. So it's just basically this mind map of what do I want the whole year to look like? How do I want to go into 2022? Because I realized that I can't just wake up on January 1st and expect to be the perfect version of myself personally or business wise. I have to go into it with a running start. And, I have about 30 days, 20, whatever days, 27, 28 days until January 1st. And if I want to be, motivated, positive, enthusiastic, healthy, energetic, and have all my plans set, I have to have that now. And I've got to start doing those things now. That way I can wake up on January 1st and be that person, because it's not just a switch, right? It's cumulative habits and how we treat ourselves. So for me, it's the big mind mapping. And then, I like paper and pen calendar, Trent, because I like to be able to physically see my week. I just have to be able to tangibly do it, and erasing something and moving something means more to me than just, shifting. That's how I was taught. That's what I feel comfortable with. But I will sit there for the month and I'll take, the monthly calendar and plan out, okay, what's each day? What's the big theme of each day? And I'll know this 6 months in advance. So I'll have my, within, before January starts, I'll have every day of 2022 completely mapped out with the theme of the day, right? What's the big event? What's the big idea? What am I gaining from it? I'll plan vacations. I'll plan all my personal stuff. I'll make sure that my year feels good going into it. Each month I do that same activity and more detailed. Each week, same thing with the week, and then each day. So, yeah, just a lot of time. I'm neurotic about my calendar because, again, if it's in my head and not in my planner, I'm either not going to do it, or I'm going to think about it too much. Like even laundry, like I put laundry in my schedule for today and I'm going to do it later. But if I didn't write it down, I'd just be like, shit, I got to do laundry, and I'll be pissed at myself for having a dirty, place. So that's that to me is, and helping people create that, because naturally as leaders, we're good at time management. We could kind of wing it and get results, but not everybody's like that. Realize that, in most of your professional attributes, you're ahead of the curve, and you have those things by nature, and not everybody does.
Drew, we've been talking for years about that. Jim Rohn, every day deserves 5 minutes. Sounds like you're using about 15. Every week deserves an hour. It could be more based on what you're describing there. And we go down the road, right? We say every month deserves a morning or 3 hour session, and every campaign deserves a day and then a weekend to be able to think about what just happened this past year and think about the year coming up.
And here, what I would add to that is determine your time based on the value that it deserves. For example, how much time are you spending with, vector-wise, how much time are you spending with development conversations? How important is development to you, and what part of your time or your week or your month is dedicated towards it? How important is your FSM CSP development program? So if Dakota, plans in 2022 to develop 10 reps to sell $25,000, well, that has to be a program. There's got to be a system. Now he can't just go into the year and say, oh, I'm going to launch a bunch of reps, get them excited, and hopefully I get a bunch of reps that want to sell 25K. He's got to create a program. He's got to create the 25K club. And he's got to start talking about it in training. And he's going to say, hey, we've got a group of reps that are committed to going after $25,000 in sales. It means they've made $7,000 in income. That's pretty, good income for a student, right? So if you want to be part of this club, we've got a meeting once a week. We call it key staff. And this is how you get involved, right? And you learn how to, base your schedule, your accountability, right? So it's being intentional about the time, the value you're putting into this program, because then he says, well, shoot, 25 reps doing 25 or 10 reps on 25K, it's 250,000. That's like half or a third of my potential yearly sales. So yeah, an hour meeting once a week is worth my time. So let me spend a couple of weeks in December developing my 2022 key staff program, because it's that important to me to develop 25K reps, right? And I think about if my intention in Cutco is to create, with launching a certain number of reps, right? And I know David is a big recruiter in Rising Sun Division. So if David says, I need to launch 250 reps next year, right? And I know that with 2K PPR, I'll do 500K new, with new reps, plus with I'm bringing into the year, that's a $650,000, $700,000 a year, in new business, plus with my FSMs, that could be my first $1 million year, right? So if it's that important to me, and if that's half of my business, well, half of my time needs to be spent on recruiting. And I think that's a big disconnect that a lot of people, not just vector people, just misappropriate their time. What are you trying to create? Well, if you want to create 250 reps for the year, and everything is going to take its course because of that, well, I have to spend all of that time and energy with those programs. And so that leads me to conversations like, how much am I delegating versus doing myself? I made more as a DVM. I made more PR calls than anybody in my organization. Not at this moment, but for a good 12 years straight. you know, and so to me, it's about that time investment into the things that are important. Staff. We talk about staff, how important it is, but how many managers really spend the appropriate amount of time investing into their people, into their staff? Personal time, investing training time, money. My AMs were always around me. I never did anything on my own. I was always being watched by somebody. If they didn't have a notebook, and a pen with them, I would get really irritated. And also like meals. I didn't like eating by myself. I just ate with people. Hey, bring your lunch. Let's meet outside and eat at the picnic table. Or let's walk over to the Starbucks. So value of time in your schedule. Just look at what you're trying to create.
Drew, you're talking about basically thinking on the business, not just in the business and just doing it. I'm hoping everybody here caught every single day of 22, probably like 21, is going to have a theme for that day. So sometimes people start asking questions like, hey, the gap, what would you do? Stop. Everything Drew just described, everybody on this call can do.
In addition to that, Trent, you taught me one more plug for that is the daily focus. You taught me about the critical six. I'm not sure how much you've talked about this on your master classes, but you taught me about the critical six, and the six, it could be whatever number. That's just a catchy phrase. It could be 3, could be 5, could be a dozen. But the night before, thinking about what do you want to create the next day? What is the purpose? What's going to come out of the next day? And if there are 6 objectives, I'll start with 3 if you want, but what are the objectives even today? So, if Jordan if she says, okay, I've got a couple PCs today, I've got 2 interviews today, I've got a conversation with, whatever. So what are the 6 things that have to come out of today? And for some managers, it's like, well, I need to create 10 demos and I need to sign 2 people. Like that's always part of their critical 6, no matter what, is they've got to sign their, 2 studs for the day. They've got to, book, create 10 demos for the week on their team. That could be part of your critical 6, especially like going into a team meeting or starting off on a Tuesday. But Jordan might say, I've got a PC. I've got a PC with Bianca tomorrow, and I really want Bianca to think about branch. And so the objective of my conversation is I'm going to get Bianca to be excited about branch. Like that's part of my critical 6. So that way she's thinking about it. And then when Jordan goes into her day, she puts all of her energy and passion into that PC, because it's one of it's the most important thing that she decided that's going to come out of her day. So she's not going to wing that conversation. She's not going to shorten it. She's not going to cut corners. She's going to give every bit of that conversation what it deserves. So that could be, a critical 6. It could be one of your critical 6 could be planning the best team meeting that you've ever planned, right? So it could be, you could put in your plan, just spend 45 minutes really developing your opening comments. So again, just think about what you want to do each day.
I'll post a link if you wanted to do the deep dive, anybody here, on Critical 6. It comes from a chapter from Chet Holmes that is the time management secrets of billionaires. And as Drew is talking here, I'm hoping that you're picking up some of what I would, if I had to come up with a title for today, it would be the Millionaire Mindset. Drew's not just showing up to that PC because it's in the schedule. He's thinking about the PC before the PC. Are you catching that? And it's not just the PC. He's thinking about the push week before the push week. He's thinking about the flow of the calendar before he's in it. You guys tracking this, right? What is strategic planning? This is it. It's this. And again, I was making the point earlier, I want to make sure everybody catches this. Everything Drew in this case does is exceptional. It's also something that every single person watching this live or on the playback can do. It requires tremendous discipline. And if you wanted to do the deep dive, we're not going to spend the time here, but if you go back to SLC's recorded material there, the masterclass stuff that I do with the group, we talk about the strategic planning every single year, and without apology, we'll continue to do it because it just continues to serve so well. Drew, This is outstanding here. I'm going to give you a chance because I know you've got some bullets here that you want to unpack. I do have a couple questions from the group. One is from Florence. Florence, I'm going to invite you to actually unmute yourself and bring your question live. Well, it was more of a comment, but I want to frame it in because I think it can be a question in there as well. As Florence had to dip out. All right, I will ask the question because, oh, there you are, Florence. Hi, I'm going to add a pin. I know some people had a role because there's a conference call for DVMs out west. Florence on
It was just a
oh, you're
comment.
back.
It was just a comment on what he said earlier about promoting team meetings, promoting the events. I was just saying it's the same thing that you can kind of do when you're promoting why they should attend training, is what I was saying.
100%, 100%. That and that's the confirmation call, and that's one of the things that that was part of those frustration points, the pain point. I hated how I had less than 50% showed it, or some people had less than 50% showed it training. And for me, it was that I was like, if I am getting less than half the people who said they were excited to this job to show up on day one, then gosh, I'm doing something wrong. So I really spent a lot of time on my confirmation calls and started having those conversations early on. I started talking to them about, hey, what are your income goals? What do you want out of this job? What's exciting to you? Well, let me tell you a little bit more about the first weekend. Let me tell you, we've got this assignment for 10 appointments, and you don't have to, you're never going to get fired for not doing a certain amount. We have no quotas, no minimums, no maximums. But the reason why so many reps do 10 appointments in their first weekend is because it gives them a really good chance at hitting at least their first promotion and maybe even their second in just their first couple of days. So that's why everybody shoots for at least 10. So I want to tell you this now, that way you have time to kind of clear your schedule. It's pretty easy to book those. It's like 2 or 3 a day over your first 3 or 4 days. But that's why it's so important, because I want you to get off to a great start. I want you to make at least your first $100. I want you to build confidence, and you making your first couple sales and hitting some promotions, you're going to be on top of the world. So I want to help you prepare for training. And that's how the confirmation call would go. It wasn't like, hey, do you remember what time it starts? Like that. It wasn't
Coming,
like,
right?
you're still coming, right? Yeah. Like
Are you coming?
nobody's negged you out, right? So that was important. And I guess Trent, as you were saying, that planning ahead, and Florence, to your comment too, is the further you plan ahead, the sooner you can promote. The reason why Dane Espigard is the best in the company at SC2 is because he starts talking about it like 3 years before it happens. So it's like he'll go to like junior high,
it's already
like
planned.
events, be
It's
like
already
a couple
done.
of years from now, let me tell you about SC2. So that he's able to talk about it so far in advance because it's already planned. He already knows his theme. He already knows the schedule. He already knows when his calendar is, for 2022 SC2, and he's already talking about it. So, and for my staff, it's the same thing with assistant managers. Developing an assistant manager for the summer starts in the fall, right? The mindset, the mentality, the commitment, the accountability, the ownership, the schedule, talking with parents and talking about the investment of their time. That all has to happen now. You can't just say in April, hey, do you want to be an assistant manager? It's going to be the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life, right? So yeah, you have to be able to prepare and build for that. And the reason why that is, Trent, is because in my experience, reps or anybody who has come after you, right? Anybody less experienced can only think half as far into the future and half as big as you can, right? So Casey's talking to a rep, and that rep is talking about the newsletter and wants to hit $1,000 in sales. Well, you have to be talking about $2,000, because for a rep to hit the newsletter, if you talk about 1,000, they're thinking 500. If you're talking about 2, 3, 4K weeks, they're thinking 1,000 at most. So reps can only think twice, or can be half as far and half as big. So if you are thinking about, if you're talking, I guess if you're thinking about what they could do in the spring, they're probably thinking about what they could do up until January. So how do you get those realigned? And it's just you talking about it more. Hey, have you thought about next summer? Oh no, next summer, that's a long ways away. Well, for you, you're planning for next summer. You're a DM, that's part of your business. But a rep or an assistant manager, they're thinking about like winter break, and that's it. So you got to think twice as big. You got to think twice as far. If you want a rep to have a 10K push week or 10K fast start, you got to talk about 20K.
This is a big distinction here, friends, right? This is the difference between, they're thinking about quitting, I should probably cast vision. Drew's casting the vision earlier, right? So this used to be an old adage. I don't even know if we still use this in Cutco training, but the best time to handle an objection is before it comes up. And we just extrapolated that over the whole rep experience is what we were trying to do, right? So in a confirmation call, in training, if you watch Drew's seminar, that's still, by the way, still is available, even if you're not paying for the full one to do it right now in your division. It's all available on Vector Connect. And what you'll see is Drew is handling every single pressure point, every single bubble of fear that's out there, and he's handling that before it comes up. So he's not surprised. He's not surprised when it comes up, and he has less people than second guessing because he's reinforcing it all the way. It doesn't mean that people don't quit. You know, Drew's now starting to talk to sophomores about 2024's push week. That's the next move for Drew to get on that Dane program. Can't recruit him yet, can't contract him, but you could have a key staff meeting with him. That's great.
He's having a killer year. I gotta figure out something. We gotta make him come back.
Johnny St. Pierre had a question as well, and then we'll come back to you. And I want to thank Jordan for helping me out with the spotlight feature here. I've only been doing this for this is my second year, and I'm today years old when I figured out that you've got to actually spotlight them, not just pin it. Excellent. So, Johnny St. Pierre, if you could unmute, we're going to spotlight you, not just highlight you or pin you. Where are you, Johnny? As soon as you unmute, I should be able to find. There we go. I think you had an interview to get to as well, so thanks for sticking around.
Yeah, no, I moved it. Thanks, Drew. So far, this is awesome. I guess my question was, what were your first 3 years as DM like? If you could share some stories, that'd be great. And then
Sure.
I guess opportunity for growth as a new DM. So if you could go back and redo your first 3 years, what would you focus on? Like the one or two things?
Oh, those are good question. And I assume you go by Johnny because Trent took that liberty already. So
Yeah.
First couple of years, it was intense. It was, I don't know how else to describe it, but intense. It was nonstop. I didn't take a day off except for company trips like, Vegas and P Banquet and the company trip. That was really my vacations. My days off were just those days off. And really where that came from, I don't know how healthy it was. It was fine for me. That's just how I knew how to operate. I watched my parents, run a mom and pop pharmacy my entire life. And, they worked 12-hour days, and that was their life. That was my childhood, just watching my parents just, grind and run a business and still have a smile on their face and treat people well. And, be, the nicest, kindest people, but also have the best work ethic out of anybody I ever met. So that was just natural for me to put in long days, long hours. I also was inherently comfortable with the idea that investing my time in my 20s would create the lifestyle that I wanted in my 30s. And it's hard to convince yourself that because you think it's all just bullshit cliche stuff from books and it's just people trying to get you to work harder, but it's true. And it's there. And I, like people, and here's a big concept I think is that I shared with my DMs earlier this year. And I think it's important for everyone is that, like, is it worth 12-hour days and 14-hour days? Is Vector worth it? And especially for some of the veterans, you probably, asked yourself this, multiple times, over the past couple of years, especially during COVID. I think it makes you question it. Is it really worth investing that much energy and time and passion and like being exhausted at the end of the day? And the answer is yes, more than ever before, because every hour that you put in. So let's say, Johnny, you put in 12-hour days, 7 days a week for the next 2 years, and whatever that ends up being in Vector, certainly it's going to give you income, it's going to give you stability, it's going to give you skill. But every hour that you put into this job is benefiting you personally, professionally, and financially. And so there's no wasted time in Vector. If you're here for the next 2 years, the next 5 years, the next 10 years, or the next 20 years, every hour you put into this is a valuable hour spent. Every PC you do is important. Even the rep that's going to quit the next day, that's important to you because it's building your career, it's building your foundation, building your skill set, your confidence. To me, it was about passion and repetition. The more I did it and the more I loved doing it, the better results I was going to get. So I did 100 PDI calls a day. I would do, 50 PCs a week. I would run, 2 interviews a day, 3-day training, a team meeting, a 3-hour staff meeting, and be advertising and flyering and postering at 7 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock at night. So my days were 14 hours and they were long, and I did everything. I didn't delegate much because it wasn't that I didn't trust my people. I think there's a difference. A lot of times people say, well, either you either over delegate because you don't want to do it, or people don't delegate enough because they don't trust anyone. For me, I just was passionate about what I did, and I wanted every rep who walked through my doors to meet me. And I wanted to do every post screen because if somebody was going to sit in 3 days of my training, sure as hell, I was going to be the one running their interview and building that relationship. So it was those things that were important to me. And I wanted to control every part of my business because I knew I needed to learn, I needed to grow, I needed to do everything 1,000 times over before I could, teach somebody else how to do it. And I realized that there were hundreds of other managers out there. And every second of the day, I thought to myself, what is the number one manager in the company doing right now? So I would think about Carl, and I would think about Kathy, and I would think about Justin Donald, and I would think about Ryan Casey. And I would be like, what's Ryan doing right now? He's probably at some DECA event. He's probably at some high school meeting some teacher. Then I would think about, what's Kathy doing? Well, she probably already put out 10,000 flyers today. So I got to get on top of that. What's Carl doing? Well, Carl probably already had a 10K fast starter before 9 a.m. So I got to figure this out too. And so it was just the intensity that I wanted to prove to myself. I wanted to prove to others. And I realized that, there's no guarantees in life and we don't deserve anything. So I think what it really boiled down to, Johnny, is like nobody was going to do anything for me. Nobody was going to build my business. Nobody was going to, create my own paychecks. Nobody was going to sustain my life. And yeah, we're a vector family. And yes, people are here for a long time. And yes, people love each other and care about each other. But at the end of the day, it's up to you. And you're not given anything in life. We don't deserve anything. We're born, we eat, we breathe, there's number 3, and we die, right? So there's what you choose to do in between is completely up to you, right? Oftentimes I tell my managers, we're just animals crawling on a rock floating in space. And so you get to choose to be great at everything you do. You get to choose to go to work, right? 9 to 5 until you're whatever, or putting in all your time, whatever work means to you. To me, if I love what I do and I'm passionate about it, I'm going to put my time into it. Matthew Kelly spoke at one of our conferences and talked about how, it was a book he wrote called Off Balance. I love that book. And it basically talks about how your life is your life, and what you invest into that time, the time that you spend doing, that's, as long as you're getting value out of it, it's rewarding. As we said before, we're all just chemicals and mush and feelings, right? As long as we feel good doing it and it doesn't disturb others, then that's what we should lean into. So for me, it felt good working, and it felt good those late nights. It felt good the early mornings. It felt good running laps around people. And then once I started getting the results, it's kind of like Trent's decision train. You do the work because it's the right thing to do, not because you feel good about it, right? But eventually you start feeling good because you're getting the results, and the train runs in both directions. So I got really good at making decisions based on what I knew the right thing to do, not based on what other people were doing. I stopped looking at my competition. Wes talks about putting blinders on and just, like in the horse race, the Kentucky Derby, just, you don't want to look at your competition. You want to just run straight ahead. And so that's what I did. So I hope that answers your question. So 3 years was just intense. It was a lot of one-on-ones, a lot of me doing everything and people watching. And from that, I developed some of the best branch managers and district managers in the company because they just got to watch me do it. And, the Nick Matlacks and the Kevin Barths and the Alex Mazureks and the Patty Jameses, just being able to do things side by side and, inherently getting better results because we're all doing it together. But, Trent, that could lead me into a concept that I want to share. I don't know how much time we have planned for today, but I want to hit this concept and this structure that for those of you who need to jump off anytime, I do not feel bad. Don't feel like
time is yours, brothers.
Don't feel like if your screen goes blank, that I'm going to remember that you jumped off my masterclass.
The time is yours. I've got a great question from Jordan here before we finish, but go ahead, brother.
Cool. I'll talk about Jordan. I'll come back to yours. Let me hit this concept so I don't forget. And this was really a little bit of a deep dive into what I was telling Gina about. And the reason why I want to share this is because this will give you the most that you can take as a concept and a platform and spend some time this week and really, put some thought into it, journal about it, make a mind map for it. But, and this is kind of a culmination of 18 years of kind of, figuring out what moves the needle. And to me, there's 3 areas, as we said before. It's developing yourself, developing others, and developing systems. So it could be a development talk. I think I hit briefly on some of these things at SLC, but developing yourself, developing others, and developing systems. And I'm going to hit 1 or 2 concepts from each, and then just give you a little bit of a list of some things to think about. And just one of the things that Trent also taught me, actually, this was from Earl Kelly a bazillion years ago, was creating a playbook. And I would take, each program, each idea, and I would take this giant notebook and I would have just 1 page, and it was just a journal of all my thoughts and all of my ideas and everything I wanted from that. So I had a journal, it said PDI, And I just wrote like a page of 30 bullets on what I wanted PDI to look like in my organization. And I wrote team meetings, and I put 30 bullets of what I wanted team meetings to look like. But anyway, so I would mind map. So I want to give you that kind of stimulation. So the managing yourself, managing others, and managing systems. When it comes to managing yourself, the major concept is that you are a boss and the employee at the same time. And if you want to be a 1099, if you want to be a business owner, if you want to lead organizations, the major hurdle is that you are boss and employee at the same time. So it's such a mind game because you have to tell yourself what to do and agree to that, be excited about it, and take action on it in the exact same moment. Like, that's a hard concept, right? Like, you're the boss. It's like, I gotta do PDI. And you're like, and immediately, if that's not a good idea, the gap between you, when you tell yourself what that idea is and when you actually do it, the length of that gap is dangerous, right? So shortening that gap is the key to personal management in my mind, right? So if I say, man, I'm going to come up with my team meeting agenda. As soon as I think about that, if I don't at least put it in my schedule to make a time to do it within the next 24 to 48 hours, if I don't do that, or if I don't jump on it right away and just start mapping it out, then all that becomes is frustration. And this is the reason why entrepreneurs get frustrated with themselves, they get lazy, and they quit on themselves, and they stop believing themselves, because the amount of time that sits between you telling yourself what you should do and you accepting that decision, that gap is just a lot of questioning yourself and a lot of frustration. You guys, has anybody ever experienced that? You just sit in that moment and then you get pissed at yourself. You get angry for not doing it. And then you start blaming yourself, and then you start questioning whether you should even be doing this. I don't have the work ethic. I'm not a good leader. I'm not made for this. So that's why I have my calendar all the time. So whenever I have a good idea, it either goes in my calendar or I just do it. Oh, I got to call this person. If I don't have time to call them right now, I'm just going to put it in my calendar so I can call them later. Right? Planning those agendas, planning programs, PR calls. That's the big one, right? So when it comes to managing yourself, I think it's that gap and the relationship you have with yourself as a boss and the relationship you have with yourself as an employee. And if you can really sit in that and think about that, and how you figure out how you can get those two sides of you, those two brains, to be closer connected, it will serve us all well. So with self, I think about that. I think about emotional management. Whether it's decision train concepts or, just blasting yourself with podcasts to just different concepts in your mind. But what's your emotional management? How do you handle tough situations? How do you handle, challenging situations? For me, it was compartmentalizing my emotions. I learned very quickly that it's okay to be an emotional person, but I also have a responsibility towards my business and towards others. And if I'm always just leading with my emotions or speaking through my emotions, it doesn't serve others always. So no matter what, showing up. I remember my toughest times, whether it was, relationship challenges or, losing family members or losing friends or losing up, top reps quitting or, DMs closing their office and things like that. But always showing up with positive attitude, always showing up for your people, and them never, it's like duck on water concept, right? You could be freaking out and you can have a lot going on and be emotional wreck, but just being calm and cool, collected, and showing up the right way. So always showing up, compartmentalizing emotions, understanding that I need to be there, and I can't afford to have a bad day, because my bad day might be the day that somebody else needs me. And that was as simple as that. Like, I can't have a bad day in my work because people need me. Think about growth and development. So the amount of time that I spent reading books, I always have a stack of 10 books. The next 10 that I want to read, I always have a stack. I've got 20 on Audible. I listen to podcasts all the time. I'm constantly putting stuff into my brain, because I realize that I can only serve people and be of value to people if I'm consistently adding value to myself. And if I'm not learning and growing at a faster rate, and if my people are outgrowing me, then I'm not going to be a value add to them. So, I think about like Curtis Jacobs, arguably the greatest Cutco rep of all time. Like, how do I still add value to him? Well, I've got to learn, I've got to grow, I've got to read a lot, and I've got to be able to, it might not be teaching about Cutco, but I can teach him about finances. I can teach him about investing. I can teach him about health. I can teach him about so many things that can be of value to him, not necessarily about knives. So growth and development, for me, it's my personal drive. I feel like I learn a lot about Cutco every year, but I just get better as a person because I'm becoming a more well-rounded person. And if I'm able to bring that to Cutco, that serves my people too. So learning about lots of things. So that's on the managing yourself. The second part of that would be managing others. Some of the concepts that I think about is team management, and creating vision for the team. We talk about that, what's in it for them. I would consistently say things like, here's where we're going to be a year from now. Here's where I started off at West Denver. Here's where the West Denver office is going to be a year from now. And this is when we were brand new. We had no idea what the business was going to be like, but we just promote. We talk about, we're going to go after, national championships, and we're going to break records in Denver, and we're going to have, 100 people at our team meetings. And this is when I had like 3 reps in my first interview. I'm like, we're going to have 100 at our team meeting. It's going to be incredible. We're going to get there no matter what. And you don't have to accept this job, but I really want you to be a part of it because I think you're getting a lot of value out of it. And I'd love to work with you. And it was those types of concepts, creating that vision, always promoting, always painting the picture, because people want to be part of something special and part of something bigger than themselves. Because again, we're all just emotions and mush, right? And for somebody to be part of a team and to get recognized at a team meeting, or to just have their name set on, in a group, for some people, that doesn't happen. That's not them, right? For most of you, you're the captains of your sports teams and your clubs, and you're the, valedictorians in a lot of cases, and maybe you weren't. But think about that for others. You are probably the biggest and best and most important mentor that most of the people you come across have ever had in their life. And taking that to heart and understanding, what it means to develop people. So I think about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. What are the intrinsic motivations for people? Which is fulfillment, sense of reward, growth, right? All the emotional things. And the extrinsic motivations are all the tangible things. It's, how do they feel about being in the standings? How do they feel about being, part of a team? How do they feel about winning a contest? How do they feel about hitting promotions? Right? So it's intrinsic versus extrinsic. And if you can really get a hold and understand quickly what's going to drive people, because everyone's different. Every single person you work with is going to have a completely different makeup of what's going to help them be successful. So for you to figure out that balance of, okay, Caleb is more of a, this feels good, I'm going to keep on doing it type of guy. And Joshua is more of, if you don't send me on a limo trip, I'm leaving. Right. So so knowing that about, sorry, Josh, I just used an example. So knowing that about your people though, and being able to lean into that, because let's say that Josh is that guy, be like, yo, Josh, we got a limo trip coming up in December. You need to start working on your names list so we can party our asses off on this limo night. He's like, bet, I'm in. Right. And Caleb's like, I don't need a limo trip. I just need to pay my bills. Right. So understanding what people's motivations are and understanding what triggers is key, but it's intrinsic and extrinsic. And then the other layer of that is, how do you recognize people? Recognition, appreciation, contests, and awards. I think recognition and appreciation are the two most underutilized and undervalued, tools in our business. But recognition can be individual, private recognition, and also group recognition. So individually, every time you talk to somebody, I can say, Callista. Am I pronouncing your name right? Callista or Callista?
Yeah, you got it, Callista.
So if I say, Callista, hey, I'm really proud of you. You made phone calls. You made 30 phone calls last night. And, there's some people on the team that they told me they're going to make phone calls and they only made a couple. And you were a person of your word. And you said you were going to do 30. You made 30, even though you only got, one demo lined up. I'm really, proud that you were, accountable to your goals and you followed through. And what that tells me is that you're going to be really successful in this job, because sometimes you'll make 30 phone calls and get one demo lined up. Sometimes you'll make 30 phone calls and you'll get 7 or 8 lined up. But I'm really proud of the effort you put in, and you're definitely somebody I want to work with for a long time. Right? That type of recognition, that one-on-one, is just as important as the big group recognition when I recognize her for the newsletter at the team meeting, or I recognize her for, having one order on the board, or whatever it is. So group recognition and also individual one-on-one recognition are equally important. So think about ways that you're doing that one-on-one and in a group, and then think about the intrinsic versus extrinsic. And extrinsic could be the contest. It could be, sales contest, demo contest, whatever. So that's concept 2, and I'll tie a bow on this thought here. But and with the others, Trent, this involves all the conversations. What's in it for them? Accountability conversations. That's all the others, right? That's motivating people and building relationships and spending time. That's all part of the second tier. The third tier is developing systems. And we already hit on some of those concepts. Where does that come from, right? What are the frustrating points in your business? What are the things that I'm, the challenges, and taking one at a time and saying, this is the challenge I'm experiencing. How do I create a system to make sure that I don't have to get frustrated by this again? And even more so, I don't even have to think about this system because it just happens, right? It's consistent. So a system could be something as simple as adding a line or a phrase to your interview or your training that you're going to say every week. So for example, we used to, when reps would forget to bring in wouldn't know their social security number, right? So when they're filling out their contracts, it's like something as stupid as that. Okay, well, what's the system we have to create? Okay, well, let me add in training in really big, bold letters. Don't forget your social security number tomorrow. And then what do you know? From there, we never had any issues again, right? So it's, what is the issue? What is the system, and how do you create it? It could be as simple as adding something to a script, something that you do on a weekly basis, or it could be a program, right? We talked about with Dakota and a key staff program. It could be your staff meeting. So for me, my staff meeting was a system. It was 3 hours long. And it still is. And in Rocky Mountain Division, this is a big theme of our division, is that we run long staff meetings. And in every staff meeting, we review every rep on the team. We review day-by-day calendar, everybody's objectives and schedules. We talk about long-term planning. We review quantums. We review vector live reports and stats and the cycle reports. We do all of it because it's the most important thing is if my staff is such a key component of my organization, how much time am I spending? And a lot of managers don't invest into their assistant managers, into the teaching and learning component as much as they could. So, the team meeting has an agenda, right? And if our team meeting is called the Big Four, and it's recruiting, sales, development, and then long-term vision. And in each of those categories, we have bullets of every part of the organization that we need to talk about. So for recruiting, there's, we have campus as a bullet, we have social media, we have, PRs, we have steroid PRs, we have assistant manager PRs, we have, online ads and school newspaper ads. So we have these bullets, and every week we talk about it. Hey, how are we doing with our online ads? How are we doing with our steroid program? And whatever needs the most attention that week, we do a deep dive into teaching that concept. So, if we don't feel like we're doing great at steroid PRs, then I would teach that for 45 minutes of the staff meeting. And then we would go back into the agenda and we would start hitting the other bullets. So, the systems, it's really just, again, figuring out what are the things that you don't want to have to think about, what are the things that you want to make clockwork, what are the things that you want to be on autopilot, that you don't have to recreate all the time. Even a system manager system, and the way that Dane has his SC2 program, he just does the same calendar, the same handouts, the same programs, and puts the twist on it every year to make it fresh and make it new, but he has that foundation already set. And so that could be PDI. It could be PDI times. When Trent, was a manager that used to be PDI, was 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. because everybody was calling the landline. So you had, 2-hour windows to call in and check in that day for your demos. So whatever that system serves your business, it could be your schedule, as a system, developing people and having a 365-day calendar. You can have what happens in January, February, March, April, May, all the way through December. And you could have a couple bullets of, okay, if I'm preparing somebody to be, to run an office, what are the concepts and what are the skills that I need them to learn month to month, right? And you can create that into a program. And then, a system could also be investing into your business, whether that's, time or money that you spend on people, on programs, on things. I love recognition. I love appreciating people. I love spending money on food. I just love taking people to meals and doing contests based on that. I like getting nosebleed tickets to like sports games and things. I just love spending time, and I love giving people experiences. And that's all part of these systems. So that's my, the way to construct, balancing it all is can you manage yourself and develop yourself? Can you manage and develop other people? And can you manage and develop systems? And when you can focus on those three legs, then you're pretty balanced.
So fun. It's like drinking from the fire hose of awesome. Let's go back to Jordan. Jordan, I'm going to unmute you, ask to unmute you, and spotlight you because that's apparently what we should be doing. And now I know. All right, Jordan, you've got the floor.
Okay, beautiful. Drew, hello. Okay, so before I go into my question, so it's obvious that you have just a lot of passion in how you do things, not only just what you do and why you do it, but also how you do it, that just like pride of excellence and care and love. You get so many questions constantly. And at the beginning of this, you even said, like, you guys don't ask me about PDI, PC, like this and that. It's like, what is a question that you wish that we all would ask you?
That is a great question. I haven't thought about that in a minute. I should be prepped with that because John Vroman taught me how to ask that question like 15 years ago. I might have to think about that for a minute.
That might be the question.
That is the question. Here's my initial response is I really enjoy talking about and thinking about the people and the mentors who shaped me and who molded me. So I just love telling stories, love thinking back and appreciating that as hard as I worked, as much as I believe myself, I bet on myself, I invest in myself, so many others have helped me through that process. And so I like when people ask me questions about that, about, the old school times and things that I've learned from others and things that I've picked up and kind of the wisdom that I've gained from learning from others. I think I might think of another one, but that's my initial reaction. That's a great question. Johnny, you asked me also before I didn't get to what would I have done differently in my first couple of years. And I would have taken care of my body better, and I would have eaten healthier and I fed myself mentally, emotionally, and physically a little bit better. Even though I was working so much, I should have still been taking the time to meditate. I wish I had been journaling back then. It took me a couple of years of telling me to journal to actually start doing it. So as much as I worked, I really beat my body up and I beat my brain up, and I felt fatigue, and I started hitting the wall. So Jordan, maybe that would be the question too. Is it's out of all the knife stuff. I feel like I have really learned a lot about life in general from just having great mentors, and whether it's the John Canes running 50 miles and being like, gosh, if he can do it, I can do something like that too. And having like those types of mentors and talking about what I learned about life. I love art. I love travel. I love people. So I wish people asked me more about my non-Cutco experiences and seeing the world and traveling and things like that. That would be the other question. But Johnny, it would be not taking care of myself, and whether it was take dedicated time to make lunch or make my food. I ate way too much Wendy's at the right across the street from my office. My first year is like a chicken sandwich and there was like the dollar menu chicken sandwich and burger like every night at 10 p.m. when I was on my way home. It was bad. I was like, I was 35 pounds heavier than I am now. When I was in my first couple of years of DM, I was like 200 and something pounds. And once I hit 200, I was like, gosh, I'm not tall enough right now, I don't think, so that was where I, made the mistake, was not taking care of my body. And then I would be tired at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And over the summer, that was hard. So Trent and we talked about energy and a lot of our conversation about energy. There's three ways that you create energy. It's what you eat, how much you sleep, and your exercise. And Trent taught me this when I was probably one of our first conversations. So he used to ask me consistently, what are you eating, how much are you sleeping, and how much are you exercising? And if you do all three of those things in better fashion, then you're going to have the energy to sustain your business, and you'll have, the end of the day conversations will be just as stimulating as the beginning of the day. So I just started eating better. I started sleeping better, and I started exercising more. And that's why I got into, Ironmans and triathlons. I started getting into, I changed my diet completely. So anyway, just really taking care of your body, because you are your number one asset, and you're only as good as you feel.
I could add to that. You know, one of the things that Drew did, for example, it was in the middle of the summer when we first started having this conversation, and it was almost, if you've heard me share this story, sometimes I use Drew's name, sometimes I don't. But I said, hey, when I hit 1 million in the summer, then I'll start taking care of myself. And we flipped that. It was like, hey, well, what if you can't hit that until you do those things, right? And I'll also um, affirm and encourage Drew because he didn't start with, okay, I'm doing 0, I'm going to do an Ironman. I could have, but he started just running with one of his district managers, right? That was a life hack. He goes, if I do it with Nick Matlack, then I'll do it, right? If I run 3 times a week. So we had him define what he thought was moving the needle to move forward and get unstuck. And it wasn't the pie in the sky. It wasn't, all right, 0 to Ironman. It was Ironman. It was a through point to Ironman, but it was start doing the thing that you know you should do. And he did all 3 of those in terms of nutrition, exercise, and just a little more sleep. Drew?
Yep. Something else you told me that summer, well, that concept of thinking twice as big and thinking twice as far. When I had that was the first year, it was 2009, and we had our first $1 million year. I think it was like July or August, and we called the MBA, Million by August. So if you really want to get an MBA, that's the real Vector MBA. So so we did so it was million by August, and right when we said that, like, I was expecting to get a phone call from you, like, congratulations. And the first thing you said was, what does a $2 million year look like?
I
And
could say that to you.
and,
You can handle it.
of course. So but I started thinking about that, and I said, gosh, that's interesting. And that's when I started really breaking down numbers and understanding it was all about the metrics, because I knew what it took at that point to build an organization just through emotion and passion and energy. And I think that you can get to $1 million office through that, but to build beyond that is really, really needs the metrics in the system. So I broke down everything into numbers, and I took, obviously I was going to still be passionate. It's obviously always about people, but I realized that it was the only way that I could hit those numbers is if I did the little things to get there. And that's when we thought about the 10-to-1 rule with PRs. And we realized, okay, for every 10 PRs we schedule, 1 is going to launch. So over the summer, I need to launch 200 PRs for me to have a chance at fending off Ryan and Justin and Kathy and all these offices. So I have to launch 200 PRs. That means I have to set 2,000 for the summer. So our summer plan, the entire summer program was based on how do we schedule 2,000 PRs for interviews. And my assistant manager staff was revolved around that. How many helpers do I need? How many people do I know in Blitz? My entire receptionist staff, we had 10 receptionists, 12 phone lines. They were all on rollovers. And this is way before, the Vector programs with scheduling. And we're all doing it in-house. So I'm running a recruiting department I'm like running a telemarketing company at the same time they're running a sales training company, at the same time running like a leadership management development company. And so doing all that at the same time, it needed to be turned into numbers, and it had to be in metrics. And that's where we started talking about top 25 reps for the campaign. So we realized that every campaign you look at, whatever the number 25 rep sells for the campaign, you add a couple of zeros, and that's what you're going to sell. Is it Vatzel? Am I saying your name right? Vatzel?
It's Batzel.
Vatzel. We have never met people. We may have met at an SLC, but good to meet you, Vatzel. So if you have, let's say for the campaign, if you're going to do, and you could look back, I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't know what you did last campaign. So, but if you look at last campaign, and let's say over the summer you did $200,000 for the summer, most likely your number 25 rep will have sold $2,000, give or take 100. So I can almost guarantee you that if you sold $200,000 for the summer, your number 25 rep will be 1,900, 2,200 at most. We're right in there. And you could do this on a campaign basis, and you could also do this for the year. So if Rob wants to create, the number one, the biggest, office Canada's ever seen, and develop more FSMs than anybody's ever seen, or let's just say he says, well, I want to have $1 million year. Well, $1 million year, the number 25 rep at the end of the year has to have sold $10,000. So Rob's system and program isn't to sell $1 million. His system and program is, how do I get 25 reps to sell at least 10K? Because that's a real tangible thing. It's not just hope. It's not just like, I hope enough people call and we get enough people scheduled for training. So I can really target. And if I've got, 40 something trainings a year, well, every other training I need to develop a 10K rep. So if my goal is to target at least one 10K rep every training, as long as I'm 50% successful at that, I'm going to hit that mark. Right. So those were the types of things that I would think about. And I would just take every concept and everything that I wanted to build, and I would turn it into a game and a number. And I would strive for that and shoot for it. And I would just, create milestones.
Well, folks, that's 90 minutes with Drew Frank, and he's not done. I'm just going to call time and hit the stop on the recording. Some of you need to roll. I mean, Drew might even need to roll. He's got a calendar there. It's all written out. Folks, we should probably have him back again. What do you think? Outstanding, Drew. Thank you so much for just generously investing so much into us, SLC, for the masterclass year over year. We really appreciate you bringing the best version of you today. And just thanks for authentically just bringing it, man. It was outstanding. Lots of thank yous in the chat there. And we appreciate you so much. It's been a great run here today, my friend. So that's it for the recording. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, Trent.